Hello, my friends. You've probably all heard about the recent robbery at the most famous, most visited museum in the world, the Louvre in Paris.
And that story is exactly where we're starting today. Using that crime as a jumping-off point, we've put together a list of the 10 most scandalous and notorious heists from the early 20th century all the way to today.
Now, I'll be honest with you. Some of the robberies you're about to hear about, even I hadn't heard of them before. Today, we're going to talk about how people pulled off the theft of priceless works of art, diamonds on an industrial scale, and in some cases worth millions and even billions of dollars.
And no, that's not an exaggeration. Billions. There was one case like that in particular. I hadn't even heard about it myself until recently, so I'll be sharing that story with you as well. We'll get into the schemes behind these crimes, the high-level accomplices, and the people involved. Mafiosi, power players, even dictators.
So today, you're in for a fascinating ride.
And right from the start, let me say this. Our list is ranked purely by financial scale. We'll go from the smallest heist on this list, though calling a few dozen $1 million small is, of course, relative, all the way up to crimes worth billions. But let's start with something recent, the Louvre. On Sunday, October 19th, at 9:30 in the morning, Paris time, the museum had already been open for half an hour. It was a quiet Sunday morning. There weren't many visitors yet, and there were barely any lines at the entrance. Inside the galleries, it's mostly tourists, taking selfies in front of the Mona Lisa, and a few staff members who don't seem fully awake yet. Now here's an important detail. From the outside, the part of the museum facing the Seine is covered in scaffolding. Restoration work is in full swing. Now, logically, there shouldn't be any construction workers on site on a Sunday, but no one really pays attention to that. And at that exact moment, a truck with a lift platform pulls up to the building. Two men, posing as restoration workers, wearing yellow safety vests, step into a construction lift and, in full view of everyone, rise up to a balcony. Then, using an angle grinder, which they later kindly leave behind as a souvenir for the police, the thieves smash through a window of the Apollo Gallery. We'll come back to that room later, and just like that, they make their way inside one of the most famous halls in the Louvre, and once they're in, right in front of everyone, they begin methodically clearing out display cases filled with unique, honestly priceless relics. At one point, a museum employee actually asks them, "Gentlemen, what exactly are you doing?" The response comes instantly. These treasures need to be moved to a secure location during the restoration work. And just like that, the thieves step back into the same lift and make their way down. They run just a few meters. Their accomplices are already waiting on scooters, and within seconds they're gone, disappearing in an unknown direction. The entire operation takes somewhere between 4 and 7 minutes. The first police officers arrive at the scene, and oddly enough, they don't even ask the obvious question. Why didn't the alarm go off? Soon after, investigators and officials flood into the Louvre. The priority is clear: assess the damage and figure out what was actually stolen. France is in shock. The Minister of Culture calls it the heist of the decade.
President Emmanuel Macron vows to restore the nation's pride. But the real question is, what exactly was stolen?
9 unique relics once belonging to French monarchs, although one of them is found not long after, right on a boulevard. While escaping, one of the thieves drops the crown of Empress Eugénie de Montijo. It's set with 1,354 diamonds and 56 emeralds. Poté, the crown is badly damaged, but still restorable. Some experts believe it wasn't dropped at all. They think it was deliberately discarded, like an unnecessary souvenir. The crown alone is estimated to be worth tens of millions of euros.
But that wasn't even the most valuable item taken. So what else did they get away with?
Here's the full inventory of what was taken. A tiara from the parure of Queen Maria Amalia of Naples and Sicily, set with 24 sapphires and 1,083 diamonds. A gift from King Louis Philippe I, reportedly to make sure the Queen wouldn't be bored. A necklace from the same set, 8 sapphires and 631 diamonds, each link crafted like a small masterpiece of jewelry engineering. An earring from that same parure featuring a briolet-cut sapphire and 59 diamonds. An emerald necklace from the parure of Marie Louise of Austria, a wedding gift from Napoleon Bonaparte in 1810. It holds 32 emeralds and 1,138 diamonds. Along with it, a pair of matching earrings set with 108 diamonds and emeralds, totaling around 45 carats. Continuing the list, a so-called reliquary brooch from 1855, set with 94 diamonds in a gilded frame. A tiara of Empress Eugénie de Montijo, dated 1853, decorated with 212 pearls and nearly 2,000 diamonds, plus another 992 rose-cut stones. And finally, a large corsage bow belonging to Empress Eugénie de Montijo, a brooch set with 2,438 diamonds, as if the entire budget of Paris had been compressed into one piece. All of it once shimmered inside the display cases of the Apollo Gallery. This isn't just the most luxurious hall in the Louvre. It's a gilded shrine to French pride, a precious jewel box, as the curators like to call it. Built under Louis XIV so that anyone who stepped inside would immediately understand. This is where the Sun King ruled, walls covered in gold, ceilings painted with allegories of monarchy. And then, of course, the jewels of the Napoleonic era and his successors. The Regent was here, the purest diamond in the world, weighing 137 carats. Purchased by Philippe II, Duke of Orléans, it later adorned the crowns of Louis XV and Louis XVI. There was also the yellow Sancy, 55 carats, worn by kings, and the pink Hortensia, a 20-carat diamond tied to the family of Hortense de Beauharnais. The crowns of Louis XV were kept here as well. Graffiti. This is a piece of French history, from royal balls to bloody wars. In many ways, this is the very treasure the rest of the world once envied. These stones have witnessed conspiracies, revolutions, imperial weddings, and now, it seems, they may end up on the black market, where they'll either be broken down and traded for crypto, or simply disappear into hiding.
I'll be honest, I don't fully understand how that works myself. But from what experts tell me, there are different ways it's done.
There are several ways to handle stolen pieces like this. One option is to break them apart, extract the stones, and then sell those stones individually. That way, a cultural and historical masterpiece is effectively lost forever.
And if the theft is done for a specific buyer, then everything is delivered intact, just as it was taken.
He hides it away in some private vault, and when friends come over for drinks and dinner, he leans in and says, "Let me show you the Beauharnais diamond." Everyone agrees. Yes, that's the Beauharnais diamond. Then he locks it away again, and no one ever sees it after that. And as for this being a custom job, there's really no doubt about it.
Who's the buyer? Who's the one behind it all? That's a different question.
This isn't just a theft. It's a blow to national pride. And maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be quite as bad if the jewels ended up sitting in private collections somewhere abroad.
But what if they're melted down? What if the diamonds, emeralds, and sapphires are simply pulled out and sold off one by one for crypto? And the irony is, this isn't the first time the Louvre has been robbed.
It started back during the French Revolution, when the museum was essentially ransacked, and then again in 1911, though that time it wasn't about diamonds and carats.
It was about a diamond of a different kind, a masterpiece of painting, and in the mind of the man who stole it, just like in this case, it was tied to Napoleon Bonaparte. And with that story, we begin our ranking.
Number 10. On the morning of August 22, 1911, artist Louis Barrault arrived at the Louvre to admire a famous painting. But to his surprise, the spot where the Mona Lisa had hung for decades was empty. The painting was gone. At first, the guards assumed it had simply been taken to the photographer, but when it wasn't there, the alarm was finally raised. Panic spread through the museum. The Louvre was shut down, just like in this case.
For an entire week, 60 inspectors searched the Louvre from top to bottom. Nothing. No real leads. The only clue, a single thumbprint left on the protective glass.
They compared against all 257 museum employees. No matches, and soon Paris fills with the most unbelievable rumors. Suspicion even falls on Pablo Picasso and the poet Guillaume Apollinaire. And to make things even worse, the fire is fueled by wild theories, most of them, of course, coming straight from the newspapers. One of the more absurd claims suggested that the Mona Lisa had been stolen on the orders of the German Kaiser as a way to humiliate France and expose its weakness. Some claimed the opposite, that it wasn't the Germans at all, but the Italian government trying to humiliate France. Others went even further. They insisted the Mona Lisa had been stolen by the very kind of figures we talk about in this series, secret societies, even Freemasons, who supposedly wanted to use Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece for occult purposes. But here's what's really interesting. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Mona Lisa was admired mostly by serious art connoisseurs. Ordinary people, for the most part, barely knew it existed, and the reason is simple. Media just wasn't what it is today. There was no Instagram, no YouTube, and no one was telling every second or third visitor, if you're in Paris, you have to go to the Louvre and take a selfie with the Mona Lisa. None of that existed. In fact, when the Washington Post reported on the theft, estimating the painting's value at $15 million, they accidentally published an image of a completely different painting. Meanwhile, one French newspaper printed a reproduction of the Mona Lisa on its front page every single day for an entire month. Only the sinking of the RMS Titanic sinking managed to push the story of the Mona Lisa theft off the front pages around the world. Be that as it may, a reward of 50,000 francs was offered for the painting's return. In today's terms, that's roughly 10 million euros.
That's what turned the Mona Lisa into a global icon. Before the fact, it was just one of many paintings in the Louvre. Afterward, a symbol, a masterpiece whose disappearance remained unsolved for more 2 years.
Then, in December 1913, a Florentine art dealer, Alfredo Geri, received an unusual predlogenie. Hey, interested in buying the Mona Lisa? The offer came from someone calling himself Monsieur Leonardo. The price, 500,000 lire. At the time, that was roughly $100,000. There was one condition. After the deal, Geri was to hand the painting over to Florence, to the Uffizi Gallery. Even so, he had a hard time believing the offer was real in the first place. He went to meet the seller. In a hotel room, the man was actually waiting for him. With the Mona Lisa, Geri played it smart. He contacted the police. They moved in and arrested the thief. The man turned out to be Vincenzo Peruggia, a former Louvre worker who had helped install the very protective glass for the painting.
This guy was an Italian patriot to the core. He genuinely believed the Mona Lisa belonged in Italy and nowhere else. After all, Leonardo da Vinci was Italian.
He was convinced that Napoleon Bonaparte had stolen it from Italy during his campaigns. In reality, Leonardo da Vinci brought the painting to France himself in 1516 and sold it to Francis I of France. But Peruggia didn't care. Most likely he didn't even know that. He planned everything simply. No disguises, no gadgets. The night before the theft, he hid inside one of the Louvre's galleries, a place he knew like the back of his hand. After all, he had worked there as a glazier. The next morning, he simply stepped out of his hiding place, walked up to the Mona Lisa, which, at the time, hung on 4 hooks with no real protection, no bulletproof glass, took it down, hid it under his smock, walked through the empty corridors of the Louvre, and exited through a staff door. He kept the Mona Lisa in his tiny Paris apartment, hidden in a false bottom of a suitcase under his bed, for 2 years.
Until he finally decided to sell it. Peruggia's true motives remain a mystery even a century later. Let's assume for a moment that he really was acting out of pure patriotism. Then why keep the Mona Lisa hidden under his bed for 2 years? And then not return it to Italy but try to sell it for money? That doesn't quite line up with patriotism, does it?
On top of that, a letter was discovered. Vincenzo Perugia had written to his father just 4 months after the theft. The letter read, "I will make a fortune, and it will come quickly. I swear that you will live long enough to enjoy the reward your son will soon secure for you and for our entire family." Hardly sounds like an altruist. Then came the trial in Italy, and the terrifying sentence: 18 months in prison. He served just 7, and for many Italians he became something of a hero. Later, Vincenzo Perugia went on to serve in the Italian army, fighting against Austria-Hungary during World War I, where he was eventually taken prisoner. He later returned to France, working as a decorator, where he died of a heart attack at the age of 44. As for the Mona Lisa, it was first exhibited in Florence at the Uffizi Gallery, just as Vincenzo Perugia had wanted. Then, on January 4, 1914, it was returned to the Louvre under heavy guard. The theft cost the Louvre its reputation, but it gave the world a true star. Visitor numbers soared, and the painting became a global icon, a cultural phenomenon that went far beyond its time. Think about it, even modern memes like those viral clips of the Mona Lisa during COVID. Either way, today the estimated value of Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece is around $850 million, and one of its insurance valuations goes as high as $3 billion. Number 9. We're staying in Paris, but moving on from paintings to diamonds. Our next subject is the Harry Winston Boutique. Located on Paris's Avenue Montaigne, this isn't just a store, it's a temple of high jewelry. The first robbery takes place in October 2007. At that time, I was actually in Paris. I still remember how every newspaper was screaming about it. Oh, 4 armed men, once again disguised as construction workers, walked into the Harry Winston Boutique in broad daylight. Inside, wealthy customers were calmly browsing and choosing jewelry, when the situation suddenly changed. In other words, just like the construction workers who entered the Louvre. It was clear these people had precise inside knowledge of what was waiting for them. It took them only about 10 minutes to smash the display cases and stuff the jewels into their bags. In total, 900 items were stolen. Diamond bracelets worth €1 million each. Platinum rings going for tens of thousands. Diamond-encrusted watches. Altogether, $16 million worth. The thieves hit the boutique, slipped out through the back door, and vanished into the Paris traffic. No one was caught, no jewelry was ever recovered, and later, everyone would realize this wasn't actually a robbery at all. This was just a rehearsal. 1 year later, they'd come back, bigger, bolder, and a whole lot more brazen. It all started in Manhattan, New York City. In 1888, an old man named Jacob Winston opened a modest little shop, and then everything exploded. His son Harry had a vision that gold shouldn't just be sold. It should mean something. It should be symbolic. It should be iconic. The result? The Shah of Iran himself bought a Harry Winston tiara featuring a 60-carat pink diamond as a gift for his beloved wife, Farah. Richard Burton spent a fortune on a pear-shaped diamond, 61 carats, and gave it to Elizabeth Taylor, his way of telling the world that love can absolutely be measured in carats. The stone was originally known as the Cartier diamond, but it was Harry Winston who cut it. Today it's called the Cartier Burton Taylor diamond, because Elizabeth Taylor once wore it to Princess Grace Kelly of Monaco's birthday celebration. And just like that, Harry Winston had written himself into Hollywood history. His jewelry wasn't just jewelry, it was a passport into the most exclusive club on the planet. So 1 year after that first robbery, Paris was about to be reminded that beneath all the glitter and glamour, there's always room for the perfect crime. December 2008. Christmas time. Paris is in full holiday spirit. It's evening, around 7:30 p.m., and 4 people walk through the doors of Harry Winston. 2 of them, elegant, well-groomed men. The other 2, dressed in wigs and women's haute couture, flawless makeup, impeccable manners. The kind of theatrical elegance that screams, old money. Security takes one look and thinks, yeah, these are VIPs, celebrities maybe, high-maintenance clients, nothing to worry about. They walk in, and the show begins. Textbook stuff. The men pull out their weapons, calmly, politely, like this isn't a heist at all. It's a performance, or maybe a Vogue photo shoot. They address the staff by name. They know exactly who stands where the alarm is, where the most valuable stones are kept. Short commands. Ice-cold movements, everything timed to the second. They took it all. Rings, necklaces, earrings, rare stones, even brooches from collector exhibitions. 15 minutes, clean sweep, $103 million. Among the haul, a Cartier necklace worth $1.5 million. Once they'd cleaned the place out, they did what you'd expect. Jumped on motorcycles and disappeared into the city. It would take years for police to piece it together, but eventually, investigators would prove that the crew behind the heist was connected to a Balkan crime syndicate known as the Pink Panthers, a group that specialized in high-end jewelry raids across Europe. In 2011, the arrests began. Former security guards, associates, middlemen, 25 people total. Around the same time, in Saint-Denis, just outside Paris, investigators recovered part of the stones, and by part, we mean 19 rings and 3 pairs of earrings. A measly $20 million worth. They'd been hidden inside a plastic container, sealed into a cement drainage channel, and that was it. Of everything stolen across both heists, nothing else was ever recovered. Number 8. We're leaving Paris and heading to the French Riviera. July the 23rd, 11:30 in the morning. A man walks into the legendary Carlton Hotel on the Croisette in Cannes. Cap pulled low over his eyes, scarf wrapped around his face, gloves on his hands. Not a single shot fired. The robber was armed, reportedly with either a submachine gun or a handgun, and threatened hotel staff. But in a matter of minutes, he walked out with several bags packed with diamonds and gem-studded watches. It played out like something straight out of Alfred Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief, the 1955 Oscar-winning film starring Cary Grant and Grace Kelly, where a thief nicknamed the Cat pulled off jewelry heists on the French Riviera. Right there at the legendary Carlton Hotel. This time, the target was an exhibition of jewelry by the house of Leviev. The company belongs to Lev Leviev, an Israeli billionaire born in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. A man who has long earned his place on the list of the world's wealthiest people. He built his fortune in diamond mining. At the time, he controlled mines across Africa, along with diamond extraction and processing operations throughout Russia. Most notably, he held a stake in a consortium developing one of the largest diamond deposits in the world, the Katika mine in Angola. The exhibition at the Carlton featured a collection of one-of-a-kind pieces valued at 103 million euros. And in 60 seconds flat, one man took all of it. Necklaces, bracelets, earrings, diamonds totaling 180 carats, emeralds, sapphires, you name it. The Brittany Pink, 20 carats. The Yellow Caravan, 55 carats, 103 million euros. No shots fired, no casualties. He took everything and vanished. This wasn't a scene from a heist movie. This was real life. And the French police suddenly found themselves staring at an uncomfortable truth. In 60 seconds, someone had stolen more than their entire annual budget for fighting organized crime. The investigation that followed was straight out of the playbook. Hot pursuit, international manhunt, Interpol. Again, the Pink Panthers theory surfaced. That legendary Balkan syndicate that had been hitting jewelry stores across Europe for years. But in the Leviev diamond case, no evidence. None at all. The security cameras caught almost nothing. A blurry figure in a cap. No fingerprints, no escape route. He simply vanished. The exhibition was shut down, of course. There was nothing left to exhibit. They hadn't even officially opened it yet. The jewelry, like the man who took it, is still missing. Or maybe nobody's really looking anymore. It all disappeared, like a smile dissolving into the sand and waves of the French Riviera. Number 7. And we're staying in the $100 million club. But this time the story shifts. We're moving from diamonds alone to jewelry, cold hard cash and securities, all in one hit. And this one went down in broad daylight, in the city of London. And the bank was robbed in the finest British tradition. No gunfire, clean, gentlemanly. On the surface, there was nothing particularly unusual about this one. But the sheer ease with which two guys walked away with $100 million in a single day, that's what makes this one extraordinary. Picture this, July 12th, 1987. A Saturday morning. The scene. Knightsbridge, the kind of neighborhood where millionaires sip tea from gold-rimmed cups and Arab sheikhs park their Bentleys outside Harrods. Right in the middle of all that gilded chaos sat the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Center. A private vault where the elite stashed their cash, their diamonds, and, rumor has it, enough compromising material to bring down half of Westminster. That's when two men walked in, posing as customers, looking to rent a safety deposit box. They were greeted, escorted into the vault. All part of the plan, of course. The moment those doors closed, they pulled out their weapons, tied up the staff and security, and hung a sign on the entrance, closed for private service. Then came the sweep. In 20 minutes, they cracked open 123 deposit boxes and walked out with cash, valuables, diamonds, and gold. $112 million total. The exact figures are hard to pin down because many of the box holders flat out refused to disclose what they'd lost. And the reason for that? Well, it's not hard to guess. Sure, some of them were legitimate millionaires and old money aristocrats, but others, UN officials, UNESCO employees, representatives of all those warm, generous, humanitarian organizations, the ones running programs like Oil for Food and various peace initiatives, the ones who had quietly siphoned off billions over the years. That money was dirty. It had been laundered long ago, and the last thing anyone wanted was to explain to police exactly what was sitting in that box. And remember, this wasn't the digital age. No electronic paper trails, no transaction monitoring. Back then, in that good old analog world, people preferred to keep things strictly cash. And that cash was sitting right there in those boxes. So when the police came asking, a lot of people suddenly developed very selective memories. Yeah, I had a Rolex in there, $5,000. Terrible loss. I'll probably cry about it. But the $300,000 in cash sitting right next to it? Never mentioned. Because that money had a complicated past. Skimmed from budgets, redirected from contracts, liberated from public funds. On top of that, a number of highly sensitive private documents were also taken, the kind people really don't want showing up anywhere. The whole thing was so fast, so precise, so ruthlessly professional. And the man behind it all was an Italian named Valerio Vice, a lawyer's son who arrived in London from Italy in 1986. He left Italy for a reason. He was already wanted there for over 50 armed robberies. So he landed in London. And no, he did not pick up cooking pasta. He got straight back to business, while simultaneously living the life of a full-blown playboy. 1 month before the heist, June of '87, he walked into the bank for the first time, posing as a client. I'm Roberto Galdini, businessman. I have a lot of money. He rented a large safety deposit box, paid £500, and walked out with a key card. For weeks after that, he studied the place, the vault layout, the locks, the cameras, the guard rotation. His partner, a certain Mr. Ferrari, played the role of the wealthy friend, the kind of guy who looked ready to dump truckloads of cash into that bank without blinking. It was only later that investigators would uncover the full picture. Vici hadn't just planned this from the outside. He had help from within. One of the bank's own managers, a man named Parvez Latif, was in on it. Investigators found evidence of debt and drug problems, and apparently the Italians simply bought him out, cash on the table, done. But even a professional of Vicci's caliber managed to slip up. In his rush to get out of the bank, he left behind a single fingerprint. It went straight to Interpol, into the international database, and they had their man. A series of raids in August of 1987 led to the arrest of several accomplices. Vicci himself went on the run, first to Latin America, then, for reasons that defy all logic, back to England. Why did he come back? To ship his beloved red Ferrari across the ocean. Well, you can't just leave a car like that behind. He was arrested immediately, sentenced to 22 years. Then deported to Italy, where he continued serving his time. His insider, Latif, got 7 years, and the mysterious Mr. Ferrari, never found. Vicci's story ended dramatically. He attempted to escape from prison and was shot dead by a guard. But here's the thing, where exactly he hashed away the millions in cash, that secret died with him. Of the $113 million, only $18 million was ever recovered. And what they did find was almost insulting: a rare 42-carat diamond, a diamond-encrusted necklace, and a Cartier watch. That's it. No cash, no jewelry, no securities, no bearer checks, nothing. Number 6 on our list. Now, as promised, it's time to dig into the Pink Panthers, the crew behind the Harry Winston heist, the same crew connected to the Lev Leviev diamond exhibition robbery, one of the most formidable criminal organizations of the 90s and 2000s. At the top, a tight-knit group of men from the former Yugoslavia. In practice, these guys looked like they'd just walked out of a Dior boutique, not out of the suburbs of Belgrade. Well, they did come from there, just in much better suits now. The Pink Panthers operated exclusively in jewelry, and over the course of their run, they pulled off heists totaling nearly $500 million, $500 million. The name was coined by British police after a diamond worth £500,000 was stolen in London. The stone had been hidden inside a jar of face cream, just like in the classic film, The Return of the Pink Panther, and so the name stuck. Equal parts British sarcasm and Eastern European audacity. Estimates put the Pink Panthers' membership somewhere between 120 and 150 people. Their signature style: stolen but genuine documents only, serious preparation, serious reconnaissance, months of surveillance, security layouts, staff routines, personal profiles on every employee. The result: no noise, no traces, in, out, gone. After every heist, they vanished from the country within hours. And the jewelry? Almost never recovered. By the early 2000s, the Panthers had gone international. Smaller crews operated under their umbrella. Franchises, essentially, paying for protection, information, and a cut of the take. One of those affiliate gangs went by the name the Turin School. Their leader, an Italian con man named Leonardo Notarbartolo. And it was this crew that pulled off the robbery of the Antwerp World Diamond Center in 2003. A job that would come to be known as the quietest crime of the century. This job became the blueprint, the template the Pink Panthers would use for everything that followed, the night of February 15 to 16, 2003. Inside a bank vault located in Antwerp's so-called Diamond Quarter, the crew cracked open 123 out of 160 safety deposit boxes and walked out with diamonds, gold, and jewelry totaling $113 million. Now, the Diamond Quarter deserves its own moment here. Roughly 80% of the world's uncut diamonds and 50% of all cut stones pass through this single district. It contains 4 separate diamond exchanges. In other words, if you want to rob the jewelry capital of the world, this is where you show up. Around 2,000 companies operate here. 30,000 people work in this district, including 4,500 diamond cutters. All transactions, roughly $30 billion a year, flow through the Diamond Office, a private foundation that oversees and protects the collective interests of the Belgian diamond industry. And the vault, the bank where all those diamonds and jewels were stored, sat 2 floors below the diamond office, protected by 10 layers of security. A 3-ton door, electronic keypad, infrared sensors, seismic detectors, cameras, Doppler radar. This thing made the vault from Mission Impossible look like a garden shed. Even Tom Cruise wouldn't have gotten in. But the night of February 16th proved that even the most sophisticated security system in the world has one fatal flaw. It can't account for a man with Italian charm and nerves of steel, and that man was Leonardo Notarbartolo. On the surface, a typical trader from Turin. In reality, a professional con man with the patience and intelligence to spend 2.5 years planning the largest heist in the history of the diamond industry. In 2001, our friend arrived in Antwerp, introduced himself as a jewelry importer from Turin, rented an office inside the diamond office building, got himself a key card, a parking spot, and, most importantly, regular access to the bank and the vaults. On top of that, he opened a bank account, rented a safety deposit box, which gave him something priceless, an insider's view of the entire security system from the inside out. And so, on the night of the heist, Notarbartolo and 5 accomplices slipped into the building. They neutralized the motion sensors by spraying them with hairspray, blocked the heat detectors with sheets of polyester, covered the cameras with plastic bags, and swapped out the surveillance tapes with pre-recorded footage. I mean, this is literally a Hollywood movie. To recap, 123 vaults cracked open, diamonds, gold, and jewelry worth $113 million. Gone. Not a single alarm triggered. A few days later, a hunter in the woods about 19 miles outside Antwerp noticed something odd. Garbage bags dumped in the forest. Inside, diamond wrappers, surveillance tapes, and salami. Because apparently, even on a $113 million heist, Italians don't skip lunch. DNA was pulled from the packaging, and just like that, the chain of doubt snapped shut. The DNA led straight to Notarbartolo. And 4 days later, with the expression of a deeply wronged innocent man, he walked into the bank himself to check on his box. They opened the vault. The police were waiting. During the search of his home, investigators found the other half of the same sandwich and a couple of emeralds stuck in the carpet. Total recovered value from the entire investigation, 78,000 euros. Everything else dissolved, resold, melted down, or simply gone forever. In 2005, the court handed Notarbartolo 10 years and a 10,000 euro fine. Later in interviews, he claimed the whole thing was nothing more than an insurance scam. Just a setup, no real heist. But those garbage bags found in the forest, they still raise questions nobody has managed to answer. Was it a careless mistake? Or a deliberate flex? A message that said, look how easy it was and there's nothing you can do about it. Honestly, nobody knows. And I'll tell you, when I was researching this one, something felt off the whole time. This heist is strange, genuinely strange, and the strangest part, same pattern, every single time, across this robbery and all the others. They never find anything, ever. Number 5, Antwerp 2003 wasn't just a robbery, it was a statement, an intellectual manifesto against the system itself. 2 years later, Amsterdam, a crime of a completely different caliber, and, interestingly, once again connected to Antwerp. Here's what matters. The Guinness World Records would later officially declare the heist at Schiphol Airport the largest and most audacious diamond theft in recorded history. February 25, 2005, Amsterdam Airport is going about its day until, behind one of the perimeter fences in the Schiphol departure zone, the show begins. 2 men in KLM uniforms pull up to a secured area in an official company van. Badges? Of course they have badges. The uniforms are perfect. Not a single security guard asks a single question. Why would they? These are their own guys. Minutes later, those colleagues, now with weapons drawn, are pointing guns at the staff of the cargo terminal, specifically at the driver of an armored truck. Inside, a special container loaded with diamonds and jewelry bound for Antwerp. the diamond capital of the world. Unlike the Antwerp Diamond Center job, this one had no elaborate planning, no layers of deception, no intellectual elegance whatsoever, and yet it was just as spectacular, just as effective. The driver was pulled out of the truck, not a single shot fired, and in a matter of minutes, right out of one of the most heavily secured zones in the airport, the crew drove off with a diamond shipment worth approximately $118 million. The exact figure is still hard to pin down, because many of the stones were uncut. The van was found shortly after, abandoned, and inside, almost as a parting gesture, the crew left behind the lowest value stones. What was recovered added up to just $45 million. The remaining $75 million in gemstones, the ones destined for Belgium, vanished without a trace, forever. The investigation dragged on for 10 years. No leads, no witnesses. The driver who'd been pulled from the truck was so deep in shock, he couldn't even put together a rough sketch of the suspects. Then, luck walked in through the back door. A detective working an entirely unrelated case intercepts a radio transmission, someone casually chatting about an old diamond job. And just like that, a 10-year-old cold case comes back to life. A new operation was launched: wiretaps, round-the-clock surveillance, undercover agents. And in January 2017, 12 years after the robbery, police moved in. 7 arrests, split between Amsterdam and Valencia, Spain. The key players: Errol H., 54, the driver and the brain behind the operation; Marlon D., 44, his right hand; and Ramazan N., a KLM airline employee, the insider who supplied the uniforms and smuggled the weapons into the restricted zone. A verdict came just 2 years ago. Errol got 7 years. Marlon got 6. Ramazan, 5. Police also named a 4th figure, the real mastermind behind the whole operation, but he didn't live to see the trial, so his name was never officially disclosed. And of course, no names, no sentences, no confessions mean no diamonds. Not one of the accused ever admitted to anything related to the stones themselves. Once again, the gems dissolved into thin air, like dust. Number 4. All right, enough with the diamonds. Even I'm getting tired of them. Let's talk about something different, because what I'm about to tell you is the story of the loudest, largest street robbery in history. The day a thief walked off with Her Majesty's Treasury bills and certificates of deposit and disappeared. £292 million sterling. In today's money, $871 million. Not bad. And somehow, this isn't even number 1 on our list. London, May 2nd, 1990, 9:30 in the morning. Oh, a perfectly ordinary morning in the city, the financial heart of the British capital. A 58-year-old courier named John Goddard, working for the brokerage firm Shepherd's, is walking down Nicholas Lane. In his hand, a leather briefcase. Inside that briefcase, 301 treasury bills and certificates of deposit worth £292 million sterling. Bearer instruments. No names, no paper trail, no way to trace them. He's delivering them to the Bank of England to provide liquidity. Then, out of nowhere, a blow to the back. A young man, maybe 20 years old, appears in front of him with a knife to his throat. Goddard hands over the briefcase without a fight. The robber runs, disappears into the crowd. He would later be found shot dead. The City of London police logged it as a street robbery. Amount: £292 million. The largest street theft in history. Bearer bonds are essentially cash. Whoever holds them is the owner, no questions asked. You can cash them out, use them as collateral, or simply sell them on the open market. The investigation immediately crossed borders, not just out of London, but out of the UK entirely. Oh, the stolen securities started surfacing in New York, Miami, Zurich, and even Peru. Scotland Yard launched an operation under the code name Starling. And soon enough, during a routine check at Heathrow Airport, investigators discovered £7.7 million worth of the bonds. 3 Irish nationals were arrested on the spot. That's when the picture shifted entirely. This wasn't a lone mugger. This was an organized criminal political network with an Irish accent, specifically the accent of a group we've covered before on this channel, the Irish Republican Army. They needed the cash to buy explosives, to buy weapons. The ringleader, Keith Cheeseman, 39, a London con man with a very dark past. Next to him, Mark Osborne, who was passing individual £1,000,000 notes for cash conversion in America. Another player, John Traynor, was using the securities exclusively for mortgage fraud schemes. And the guy who actually did the grab, Patrick Thomas, a small-time crook from South London. Thomas was killed almost immediately after stealing the briefcase, by his own crew, obviously. Osborne was also shot dead, again by his own people. Cheeseman was arrested in the United States and sentenced to 6.5 years. Traynor was picked up in the Netherlands and got 7. This is one of those rare cases where the police actually did their job, and did it fast. Within 2 years of the robbery, investigators had recovered £100 million. And it gets better. Of the 301 stolen securities, police managed to recover almost all of them. Only 2 were never found. Now, I'm no detective, but I have exactly one question about this case. How did members of the Irish Republican Army know that on that specific day, that specific man would be walking down that specific street, carrying £292 million in a briefcase? That question has never been answered. Number 2. If the treasures stolen from the Louvre took relatively little time to recover, the paintings stolen from a museum in Boston, Massachusetts, have been missing for 35 years. And counting. March 18, 1990, 1:30 in the morning. The city is asleep, hungover from St. Patrick's Day. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum is what you'd call a Victorian jewel box, stuffed wall to wall with masterpieces. And on this particular night, that jewel box has exactly 2 guards on duty. 2 unknown men, dressed as cops, fake badges, the whole setup straight out of an 80s TV show, knock on the door. The guard on duty, Rick Abbott, 23 years old, a music student, opens up. They shout, "Police check, sir." He hits the buzzer and lets them in. The second guard, Randy Heston, comes running over, another true professional. The thieves tape both guards' eyes shut, march them down to the basement, and handcuff them to a steam pipe. Classic. Then they begin their stroll through the galleries, 81 minutes. That's all it took. In that time, they calmly walked out with 13 works of art, worth $500 million. Vermeer, Rembrandt, Degas. The paintings were cut from their frames with surgical precision. Not a single alarm went off. What exactly did they take? 3 Rembrandts, including his only known seascape, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. Jan Vermeer's The Concert, the most valuable piece in the hall, estimated at over $100 million even at the time. 5 Degas drawings. A landscape by Govert Flinck from 1638. A Chinese bronze beaker dating back to the 12th century BC, and more. $500 million. $1 billion in today's money. The largest art theft in the history of the world. Experts have been puzzling over the selection ever since. Some of what was taken wasn't even that valuable, while far more expensive works were left completely untouched. But these 2 knew exactly what they wanted. The Rembrandts were cut from their frames. The Vermeer was carefully removed. And yet, nobody touched the Titian worth $100 million. Nobody touched the Botticelli. Why? A bit of background on the museum itself. Isabella Stewart Gardner, widow of a wealthy merchant and shipping magnate, opened an art museum inside her own home in 1903. Inside, her extraordinary personal collection. Over 2,500 works of art, including pieces by Rembrandt, Titian, Raphael, Manet, and Michelangelo. Isabella passed away in 1924. In her will, she left $3.5 million to keep the museum running. But she had one firm condition. The arrangement of the artworks could never be changed. Nothing could be sold. Nothing new could be acquired. The collection would remain exactly as she left it, forever. By the 1980s, the museum was running out of money. The financial strain had pushed it to the edge. No climate control, no insurance. The building itself desperately needed basic repairs. As for security, 60 infrared motion sensors and 4 cameras mounted around the perimeter. That was it. Inside the museum itself, not a single camera. The board of trustees had decided the cost was simply too high. The only way guards could call the police was by pressing a button on their console. Well, they pressed it, just not in time. The investigation went nowhere. Police, FBI, everyone took a swing at it. The Boston mob was suspected. Then the Merlino gang. Then, once again, the IRA surfaced. Then drug traffickers, oligarchs. People were arrested. Some were even killed. Nothing was ever proven. And most importantly, the paintings were never found. Rumors circulated that some of the works had been smuggled to Ireland, then to Japan, into a private collection. All dead ends. One of the earliest theories was an inside job. Suspicion naturally fell on Rick Abbott, the guard who buzzed the fake cops in. He passed a lie detector test, and in 35 years, no formal charges have ever been filed against him. As for the museum, the empty frames are still hanging on the walls. They were never removed, never replaced, left there as a monument to their own spectacular failure. Number 1. The robbery of the Central Bank of Iraq. $1 billion. It earns the top spot for 2 reasons. First, no one has ever stolen this much money before or since. Second, there were no masked gunmen, no tunnels, no explosives. The man allegedly behind it all, former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. He personally ordered the funds to be withdrawn from the central bank's accounts and handed over in cash to his son, Qusay. The amount requested, $900 million in $100 bills and 100 million euros in cash, was so large that it took 3 tractor trailers just to haul it out of the bank. But that's still just the theory. Here are the facts. 4 a.m., March 18, 2003. Just hours after American forces began bombing the Iraqi capital, 3 or 4 military trucks pulled up to the Central Bank of Iraq. Men in uniform walked inside without any resistance whatsoever, loaded up bags of cash, and drove away. The whole operation took 5 hours. Who took it, where it went, whether it's hidden somewhere or long since spent? None of those questions have ever been answered. And honestly, what did you expect? There's a war going on. Nobody's filing police reports. Later, after the fall of Hussein's regime, former bank officials claimed that the soldiers had presented a handwritten letter, personally signed by the dictator, ordering all the cash to be handed over to his son Qusay. The stated purpose, funding the liberation war against American occupiers. The U.S. Treasury said it had absolutely no idea where the money could have gone. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Defense cheerfully filed its own report. American forces discovered over $650 million in cash on the outskirts of Baghdad. Marines found it inside a sealed cottage near Saddam Hussein's presidential palace. Inside the house, 40 sealed aluminum cases, each one packed with 40 bundles of $100 bills. Total, $160 million per house. Shortly after, in nearby houses, not working-class homes, but residences of senior Ba'ath Party officials and Republican Guard members, they found another 120 cases, $500 million more. The cases were stamped with the seal of the Central Bank of Jordan. Most of the bills had been printed between 1999 and 2001. This money was stolen in March 2003. As for the rest, nobody knows. Nobody has ever known. The theft was officially confirmed by only one source, the Iraqi Central Bank itself. According to investigators, it was Saddam's son, Qusay, and his personal aide, Abid Hamid Mahmoud, who organized the removal of the cash from the bank. Was this an authorized state withdrawal, or a criminal freelance operation by those closest to the dictator? That question would never be answered. Qusay Hussein was killed in July 2003 during a U.S. Special Forces operation in Mosul. A war, American troops, a dead son, $1 billion, and nothing but questions. And here's the thing that really gets me. Those bills had serial numbers, right? And those serial numbers were presumably recorded somewhere in the central bank's documentation. At least, that's what you'd think. Maybe I'm wrong. And yet, nothing was ever found. You know, this planet of ours is something of a black hole. Diamonds disappear into it. Vermeer paintings. Billions of dollars. And it all just happens, just like that. Here's the world we live in. Accidentally send $5 to the wrong person on Venmo, and you might find a federal agent at your door wanting to know about your suspicious financial activity. But haul $1 billion in cash out of a central bank on 3 tractor trailers in the middle of a war? Not a single problem. Not one phone call. Not one question. Think about that.
That was our completely subjective ranking of the most audacious heists of the 20th and early first centuries. And I'm sure you've got your own additions to this list. Drop them in the comments.
All right, folks, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that now and hit the bell so you don't miss a thing. We've got a lot more where this came from. See you next time.